Welcome to the Locker Room podcast. I'm from the lads at dailysportscience.com. I'm delighted this week we've got Owen Mooney. Owen, you're very welcome to come on. I've been trying to get you on for a little while. You've been on my radar. I think especially since the beginning of COVID period, you've been online doing a lot of webinars and presentations and everything. So thanks very much for coming on to our show.
Thanks for having me, Ciaran. Looking forward to it today for a little chat about play and my background, my experiences, and hopefully somebody will take something away from it after listening.
Exactly. Brilliant. Right. I'm going to go quickly through your profile because I think it's very interesting for people. I'm sure everyone in the GAA world know who you are already, but I think it's interesting the way you've gone from different sport to different sport, different countries, different roles. And I think it's worth kind of just dipping into that. So at the moment, you're Learning and Games Development Coordinator for Dublin GAA, and we'll get into that in a bit to chat about your current role. Also then, very interestingly, you're a PhD researcher at Leeds Beckett University in the area of play and sport. And again, I think I'm going to probe a little bit about the concept of play and the science around it and everything like that, which will be interesting. And obviously also you host the iCoachKids podcast at the moment, which is really interesting. And I've listened to a few episodes just over the last number of weeks and months. And it's been, I'm hoping it's really successful and it sounds great. Previously then as well, you were with Special Olympics Ireland as a national coach and sports development coordinator. And also you worked for Ulster GAA and Ulster LGFA while being in with Rockland GAA club in New York. Fascinating. I think during that period was the first time that I really got to know you online and everything. And also I think I saw you as well in the GAA National Games Development Conference, which you spoke in 2011 and 2019. Okay, before we jump into those things, I'm just going to have a quick word about our sponsors, and we'll get into discussion right after this. This episode is sponsored by Ripped. Very kindly have come on board with us with dailysportscience.com. So Ripped is a coaching platform that connects performance coaches with their clients and athletes. It helps coaches program more effectively and efficiently and deliver individualized training plans to their clients and athletes via the Ripped app, which is ripped.app or ypt.app, where they have the supportive exercise technique videos and other content. The platform streamlines the collection of workouts, well-being and training load data, so coaches have all their data in one place and can quickly get the insights they need to optimize the performance and improve results for their clients and athletes. Ross, we said we'd get serious this year. We tried to get Joe fit when he was involved with London. We hear he's got a new girlfriend in town, so it's time to get him fit.
Yeah, and the Ripped app is perfect for that, Kiers, because he wouldn't listen to us over pen and paper, so we have to try and give him something electronically. So I think, Joe, your rehab's gone well and you're back running and playing, I think.
I am, Ross, yeah. I'm back playing there. I'm scoring points for the local GAA club here, so it's all good.
I see, Ross, I'm looking at him. He's got his London County Senior jersey on. So did you get the call up, Joe? You do know they're not training at the moment.
I did, Ciaran. Yeah, I did. I was wondering where the other jersey went to. You know, the home jersey, the green jersey. I think you stole it. I think you stole it on me, Ciaran, there with your stag night.
I got, Joe, I got about 5 of those jerseys, so, you know, don't worry about that. Anyway, Ripped, so it's perfect for S&C coaches, working with private clients and teams, and for gyms and online coaches. It gives coaches the flexibility to monitor performance in person with the gym mode dashboard and also fully remotely with the Ripped app as well. It has an online program sales platform, which is perfect for any coaches who want to build their client base and also for teams as well. Joe, I hear that you're looking after your nutrition, a lot of Turkish and Mediterranean food.
Absolutely, Ciaran. You know, and it's the healthiest food that you can eat out there. So I think Ross too. Ross is an Italian wife, so he knows all about the Mediterranean food as well.
Yeah, as I said to you before, Joe, I'm not sure Turkey counts as Mediterranean. I'm not sure, half and half, but yeah, it's lovely food. You know, meats and the pita and stuff, fantastic salad and lovely, really nice.
Lovely. Make sure you stick with the Turkish food then, Joe. Don't be going looking at Spanish food or anything like that. Okay. If you do, Joe, you've got an app, the Ripped app as well. You can upload nutritional information and stuff like that as well, which is perfect. The guys with RIP, Cormac and the lads, they're working with Kerry GAA, with Swim Ireland, and obviously with DSS, Daily Sport Science. We run the online coaching as well with RIP, so it's a brilliant app. We're delighted to have them on board. Lads, they've come on board with us. They're given 2 months free access to their service as well. So anybody who wants to use their service, just go over to dailysportscience.com/pod. So pod, P-O-D, and you'll get information there. You can link in with the lads with RIP and get 2 months free access. We need to pay the big wages of Ross, Joe, so it's good. We can keep doing this, get Ross on board onto the podcast and keep him happy, and obviously his wife and family happy as well.
He's a hard man to pay, Ciaran. I think the only man left in England to be able to pay him would be Rishi Sunak.
Good old Rishi. Okay, so thanks very much to RIP again for their support, and make sure head over to ripped.app or else go to dailysportscience.com/pod. Thanks, guys. Okay, great. Let's jump in on. There's a huge long profile there of previous jobs and different roles in sports and everything like that. Do you want to just bring us up to speed as regards just a few of those roles, and I suppose some of the main learnings you took from those roles, and also some of the differences between the sports and differences even in from country to country?
Again, thanks for having me on. Been looking forward to it, as I said before. I started off with Ulster GAA. I became a Department of Education physical literacy coach as part of their Ulster GAA's program linked with the IFA. So it was a Department of Education program to improve the confidence and self-esteem of the children in PE, as well as the confidence and self-esteem of the teachers taking PE. So although we were working for Ulster GAA, we had obviously sound links with the department themselves, with the IFA. So in terms of our knowledge base, it was huge. We had 6 weeks of in-service before we went into schools with somebody you know very well yourself, Terence McWilliams. Eugene Young would have been overseeing that program, as well as Dermot Marsden at the start. That program, again, mainly in schools. So I was very fortunate to be based in my own county of Fermanagh. My old primary school was one of my schools every Wednesday. So going into schools, we were working with 48-year-old children, and that was the main remit. We would go in once a week, depending on the size of the school, the size of the classes. Obviously, that would affect the number of classes and schools that you were able to go with. But again, we had a lot of autonomy in terms of what schools we would go to. And again, being based in Fermanagh, there's 26 maintained schools, so 26 Catholic schools. But because it was a Department of Education program, we obviously needed to link in with the controlled schools and the special needs as well. So I would have been based in my own tireless Escape and Rowlands, but also in the Moat Primary School, which would be classed as a controlled Protestant school. Very, very much in terms of going in about physical education, physical literacy, fun, enjoyment for the children. And not about promoting GAA, not about promoting soccer or cricket or anything. We did all of the sports through the games, through different activities, different times of the year, so that whenever the children did want to go and try out a sport, that they would have those underlying fundamentals to try and play that sport. They obviously depend on the school. Some schools would want to promote GAA more. Other schools, and the Moat being one of the schools, the children were saying, well, can we do the hand pass, or can we do hurling? Because there was a lot of obviously mixed marriages, and the children were already down at the GAA club. They played a lot of soccer, basketball, so their understanding of sport was much more advanced than I even thought. But one of the things that we wanted to bring in for the Department of Education program was, again, not to just be in schools, but it was to create that school club link. So it's okay getting into schools and coaching the schools, but if the clubs don't know you're there, and if there is not that link to see what's happening in the school towards the club, whether camps are coming up, what sessions are happening with under 6 and under 8s. And again, we would have brought in, some of the clubs would have brought their coaches, their volunteer coaches, to come and watch some of the sessions that we were doing. we would encourage that, and then we would go out into the clubs in the evening as well. So obviously we would have a little bit of coach education, workshops around parent engagement, club development plans, games development plans. So a whole huge myriad remit that we had, but the main focus was in the schools, the teachers and the children themselves.
Great. Can I jump in? Can I jump in there? Because I think that's really interesting. Because I spoke to a friend of mine, John Gaffey, who's a former Westmeath fullback into county footballer. He's got young kids now, the age of 6 and 7, and his first experience of the actual coaching now is with that age group of kids. And I think it's under 7, but it's probably 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds, 7. And I remember I worked as well, similar like you, for Dublin GAA back in the day. But it's interesting that somebody who is such high level in his own playing career probably doesn't know what to do with those kids of that age. Like, what are the kind of, what did you do with them? And is it a case of just doing the normal hand passing, kicking, catching skills, or do you want to bring in extra play and different things involved into it?
So again, where I am now compared to where I started with Ulster GAA in terms of the in-service is massive. So when we had all our in-service, Terence would have been very much to the point of, listen, here's a task, here's a scenario, here's a problem, fix it. There's a child who finds it difficult to catch, so what are you going to do? How are you going to bring it back to make it a little bit easier? There's a child who is exceptional at running, turning, changing directions, soloing, kicking. How are you going to make it harder for them? And they're in the same class. Yeah. So the learning and obviously the physical capacity of the child within a class is huge. Yeah. And at that age group, it can be so difficult because the language that you talk to them, obviously with your friend with Westmeath, his language as an inter-county footballer is completely different when you're working with 5 and 6 and 7-year-olds. Yeah. And that's where I am at now. I very, very rarely will do workshops with 8 years and older, but most of the time I'm either working with 4, 5 and 6-year-olds all the time, or I'm working with adults. And I can see similarities and obviously contradictions with both, but there's a lot that you can gain from being a parent or being able to talk to children and just let them at it. And again, It goes back to kind of the in-service that we had. One of the things that we were asked to do was just have a go. And that's one of the things that I always say is have a go at something. Put yourself in the situation of a child. Don't try and tell them everything. Tell them one thing. If you want to tell them anything, that's fine. But one of the first lessons that I did, and Terence actually came out to see some of the lessons, was I was in St Mary's in Newtown Butler, and hugely differentiation in terms of the children within the class. There was some children with special needs, so trying to make it inclusive for everybody was a challenge, and a good challenge. But a lot of it was I would ask them what they wanted. Yeah. I would give them a ball and a couple of cones and a hoop. Okay, you tell me what you're going to do. How are you going to look at handling, or how are you going to look at kicking? I don't care what you do, as long as you use your hands. So you'll have some of them hand passing, catching, rolling, holding the ball even, or just picking it up and setting it down. Yeah. That'll give you a good understanding of where they're at. Same as children and adults. If you ask them to think, okay, show me what you can do with the ball. A child at 4 years of age, an adult at 30 years of age, is going to do things that they're comfortable doing. Whereas if you say, I want you to do the hand pass today to a 6-year-old, and it's like, what's the hand pass? I don't know what the hand pass is. Whereas if you say, here's a ball, show me what you can do, you might see the hand pass. Yeah. But without even realizing that you're getting an understanding of what they can do, so then you can either make it harder or you can make it easier depending on where they are on that continuum.
Yeah, I remember Ger O'Connor and Brian Ladden up with Dublin GAA, who I know you know well. They had a great kind of saying of just look through the eyes of the kids when you're coaching them, because a lot of times people will come from playing adult sport and they'll think of in terms of an adult session of, drills and fitness and everything very structured. I mean, your sessions with that age then, that under 6s, under even and younger, under 7s, under 8s, is it chaotic? Is it mayhem? are you working on physical literacy skills? Is it just basic motor skills? How does it look for somebody who doesn't know?
So if anybody's kind of seen some of the workshops and webinars I've done, I took a video when I was with Rockland, and it was a video of roughly about 60, 70 children in a hall in the local high school with parents and coaches and young coaches and older coaches in the one room, and it is complete organized chaos. I lost my voice 20 minutes into it, but the overarching theme of the video and of that session was handling. Again, I didn't care what they did, I didn't care how they use the ball. Three things: as long as they're safe, as long as they're watching where they're going, and number three is as long as they're using the handle any way they want. Now that was my overarching theme, and it's the same when I'm coaching an adult team. I have an overarching theme for a session, but I have an idea of what might happen. I have an idea as well of what I want to do, but 10 times out of 10, that be ripped up halfway through, especially when you're working with 4, 5, and 6-year-olds. If you're coming to a session, planned out, looks great on paper, and you're going to do A, B, C, D, and then you go to A and B, you want to get to C, but that's not happening. Do you go to C or do you stay at B? Or do you completely change the session and let them at it? And what you're going to learn as a coach from being able to, as you said with Ciaran and the guys, look through the lens of the child. You know, how did you feel when you were at that age? You know, you were out playing on my confirmation registration for my PhD. I talk about what it was like for me and for you as well when we were younger. It was jumpers for goal posts. It started off 1v1, and half an hour to an hour later was 20v20. And how that made you feel, and all the learning you were doing in terms of tactical awareness, social development, speech, language, physical development. But there was no adults, all children. And that's kind of where, when you're thinking as a coach and the person in front of you is the be all and end all. It's not the sport, it's not the skills, it's the person themselves. And what you want is for them to come back to your sessions. And if that's happening, they're enjoying your sessions, and then it's up to you. Like, there's nothing to say that you can't have a structured session. But again, there has to be an element where the child's voice is important. And again, I have a real issue with adults telling children to play. That really annoys me, because it's a human right of a child to play. It shouldn't be up to adults to allow children to play. So, you know, but you can get around it by asking them what they want. So there's Article 12. You're getting to understand what they want, what they want to do. And then, okay, right, we'll have a go with that. But again, not being afraid to do it. Now, the session might go completely off the wall. But again, if they're enjoying it, if they're being safe, which is very important, and they're learning, by just ask them a question, that's so important. And one of the things that, you know, what I want to focus on when I'm coaching, whether it's adults or children, is why. So what's your why? What's your own why? Why are you doing this session? Why are you working with that age group? Reflecting on that. But your session, how is your coaching session going to impact on the person, on the child, on the adult, whoever it is in front of you? And when you have that information, then you can go to the what. But I wouldn't go to the what first. I would go to the why and the who and the how, and then, okay, well, I'm working with a group of 4-year-olds, so I'll do a section with 4-year-olds, and I'll do the same session with an adult team. But again, the concept is a little bit different. The rules may be a little bit different. I'll be able to, you know, go a little bit more in depth in terms of tactical knowledge, but the principle of the actual game and the theme is very similar. It's nearly the same.
There was a really good FA coach education officer, and he used to say to us, embrace the chaos. Just with those kids, just don't be afraid of it being chaotic. That the more structured it is, probably the worse it is. Because if you think about it, if you have a group of very young kids, if there are 15, by right there should be 15 balls, shouldn't there? In the air, catching, kicking, rolling, whatever it is. And I think that's a good place to start, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Again, this is where it's a little bit of a contradiction for me. I love the chaos and I love organized chaos, but before a session and after a session, I hate chaos. Everything everything has to be all the guys who know me, all the guys all the coaches who have worked with, and the players have worked with. Its colours have to be the same, the cones have to be the same, and it has to be in a certain way. But the children, in fact, realising it, when I set the activity up, they tidy it, but they have to put things in order. So they're doing sequencing, they're learning through that as well. Mainly it's for my own OCD more than anything, but when a session is chaotic, the game is chaotic. So the session, and again, it comes back to the language. So the language that you talk to players about, or children or adults, doesn't matter who it is, has to be made to the game. Yeah. So drills, if you want to drill, go to B&Q. Actual word drill does not mean A to B, me passing to Ciaran, Ciaran passing me. That's an activity. But then there has to be decision making within that. Yeah. And whatever you're doing has to be, they have to make decisions. Yeah. It can't be boredom. It can't be making sure that, I'm doing this because it looks good. I look good as a coach. And that's where probably a little bit of the lack of confidence might come from, especially with parent coaches and new coaches, especially coaching that age. You go to, and again, yourself, Ciaran, working with QPR and working in a different country, and what I've seen in America is the parents see the coach not staying within the lines and not doing A, B, C, and D. They're like, what is he doing? But they don't realise that the rationale of why you're doing it is underpinning for the learning and development of the child and the player. And that's one thing where parent engagement is extremely important. Yeah. Because you're able to give them a rationale. Listen, you're going to see absolute chaos in a session. You're going to be wondering, is he okay? What is he doing? But the overarching theme, the overarching kind of objective that I want is within that session. It might be, I want them to learn a different word. They might be learning a different concept. It might be physical development. It might be making friends, chatting to a new friend. But that's for the parents as well, because in that video I'll talk to you about, and I'll send it to you later on, you'll see parents stand at the side talking. Now, I had said to them before that, listen, if you see a new parent, if you don't want to get involved in the session with your child, that's fine. But you cannot stand on your own. You have to talk to somebody else that you don't know. So you're creating that community, you're creating that environment where the coach and the parent are working together to help the child and the parent.
Yeah, it's interesting because it made me think, and I know he's your big mentor in your career, Dr. Sergio Lara Bercial, and he spoke on your podcast about that balance and that trade-off between giving the kids what they want and what they need. Because can you speak a little bit about that? Because that's quite an interesting concept.
Yeah. So again, I'm known Sergio for over 10 years. The first kind of contact that I had with him was with Ulster GAA, and we've kind of kept in contact, and my role with Ulster kind of accentuated that and to where we are now. But Sergio has always talked about, as he said, the needs and wants. So you as a coach are looking after both the needs and the wants. But in terms of the game, the child and the player has needs to allow them to play the game to the best of their ability. However, their wants could be completely different to their needs. So their wants might be, listen, I don't want to play a defender today. I want to be a forward. That's fine. That's no problem. But then that's their want. But then that will link into their needs as well, that they need to be able to experience different positions, different roles as a coach, as a mini referee, etc. And depending on what age group you're working with, their wants could be completely different. I don't want to do this today. I don't want to get involved today. I don't want to play. Okay, that's another issue separate. So I would not push that too much. And the reason why is when I was in school, I had a little fella, 6 weeks, he would sit out of a lesson, never did anything for the first 6 weeks. And I was constantly jumping on him. If you want to get involved, you're more than welcome. More than welcome. When he's seen his friends playing and enjoying themselves, I thought, okay, maybe he might come in next week. No, 6 weeks later, he just decides to start playing, and he never looked back. So not putting them under that kind of pressure that you have to do this, because if you're 6, you need to be able to, when you move up to underage, you need to be able to do A, B, C, D, you need to be able to pass, whatever it is. But again, you have late developers. You have children who don't even like sport. They're just there because, number one, their mum or dad or guardian or whoever is bringing them is forcing them out the door, dragging them to the car, bringing them because they might want to go for a coffee, my friend. That's fine. There's no issue with that. However, there has to be some kind of enjoyment for the child. And again, if they're coming to your session, even though the parent might be forced, you need to have a word with the parent, but also you need to make sure that you're getting to know the child, not just the player, and ask them how they are. And some of them, again, the game might be too difficult for them, or they don't understand what you're asking them, and that's where allowing them to enjoy themselves and give them a ball and say, listen, have a go at this. Show me what you can do. Here's a friend. What games can you come up with?
Yeah.
How can you come up with a game that's going to help me make you better, or help me enjoy this more than anything? And again, that needs and wants is a difficult dynamic as a coach, because you have a responsibility. If you're a club coach in a sport, you have a responsibility obviously to teach them through the game, not teach the game to them. And that's where the needs and wants marries a little bit better together, because you're getting them to enjoy the game. You're having them think about, okay, well, I need to do this to be able to do this. But then you want them to make new friends. You want them to enjoy the game. You want them to get involved in the club, get involved in the community, understand new words, new concepts, new positions, new roles. So that's a difficult dynamic as well. And it's depending on the age group, your wants might be more important than the needs, and vice versa. But again, even for adults, and again, Ciaran, with your experience with London, etc., and with QPR, even elite players, their wants could be completely different to their needs.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's interesting as well, because a lot of people who enter into coaching and they're novice coaches at the beginning, I always say to them, it goes back to my buddy John again, that you actually know far, far more than you think, because the first instinct of somebody when you ask them to step off the sideline and give a hand with the young kids is that, oh sure, what do I know about coaching? I know nothing. But you say to them, well, you know how to organize a group, don't you? Or to set up something. And you're a parent, aren't you? So you can facilitate, you know when to push the kids a little bit, to drive them, well, to come off them. And it's like you say there, that sometimes even if a child doesn't specifically want to do something in that moment, you might find a different way of engaging them into the session. So I think they'll know far, far more than what they let on at the time, or what they realize, I suppose.
And that's a great way of putting it, because like you know yourself, as a coach, yes, you want the players to improve, and as a player, but as a person, you're building an environment, you're building a connection with the player, with the sport, with the community, with the club, whoever it is. You're building relationships. And as a parent, whether you're a parent or not, I'm not a parent, no, you're a new parent, and congratulations again. But that relationship and connection to yourself, to your family, to your friends, that's so important when you're coaching. You know, and you don't have to know all the tactical or all the technical skills or physical fitness or anything like that. If you have empathy, if you are able to talk to people, to relate to people, to have people enjoy your company, and you know, to put yourself, as we talked about earlier on, to put yourself in the position of that player, whether it's a child, whether it's a 16-year-old, or whether it's somebody involved in recreational sport. You know, you talk to them, make sure that they're okay, make sure that they're healthy for their own well-being. You know, you're building a social connection and an emotional connection, and sport is emotional. We're all emotional in terms of it, whether it's individual, whether it's physical activity, even it changes our whole mindset. And whether they feel confident or not is a different story, but when you kind of put that to them, you don't ask, you don't get. If you ask them and say, listen, will you give a hand? No, I don't want to. Next week, will you give Ciaran a hand? Ciaran's doing a really difficult activity. Will you give him a hand? Just watch the children. He's on his own. They go in and combine the health. So then you're giving them a little bit more responsibility as we go on. And then a year down the line, they're as a head coach. So that's where you want to go. But again, not forcing them. Same as the children, same as the players. You know, not forcing them, because a coach's needs and wants are very different and similar in a lot of ways.
Yeah, but Dr. Brian Cuthbert said it nicely, who he wrote or was the main instigator of writing the report on talent development and identification and development squads in the GAA recently. And he said about keeping as many players involved in the system for as long as possible. And that's a great goal, because your little player at under 12 may have fallen out of love with playing the game at the age of 18 or 19, but maybe they can be a secretary, maybe they can be a treasurer. Like, it's a lifelong engagement with the GAA, and I think that's a really good way of doing it. I want to ask you about Rockland's GAA, because to me that resonated with me a lot, because what I saw was an individual working in a GAA club abroad, and in my case London, your case in New York, and I saw a huge amount of energy emanating from yourself and from the work that you were doing over there. First of all, how important is that, where you bring energy into not just the role, but for people who are just coaching their under 10 team or 12 team or something like that? How important is that? And secondly, I want to ask you a little bit about, I know you helped a lot of clubs with kind of strategic plans and kind of around governance and coaching structures and stuff like that. And I think that's quite interesting for people to listen to, the importance of that, and maybe some of the little things that you did to kind of facilitate that process.
I kind of get goosebumps anytime I talk about my time in Rockland. It was like, I still can't believe I was over there in the ways, and my personality, would be very positive. I'd be a little bit like a class clown sometimes, and that's why I enjoy working with 4 and 5-year-olds, because I can tell them the sky's green, and they go, "No, it's not." I said, "No, the sky is green." "No, it's not. The sky is green." "Really?" I said, "Yeah, I'm colorblind." "Oh, okay." And then they believe you, and then it's forgot about it. And one of the things with Rockland, and how it came about was by accident, but when it was there, everything that I had experience of with Ulster GAA, the support that I got with Ulster GAA, as well as Ulster ladies, when it was seconded there, was a huge foundation for me, because anything we tried in Rockland worked because we did it with Ulster.
Yeah.
And Rockland had the capacity and had the support, not only for me, which was immense, and again, I get goosebumps with all the people that helped me, all the people that helped my now wife. No stone was left unturned in terms of what I wanted, what I got, and how they helped me along that journey. And we go back to a little bit about relationships and the environment, and it just clicked. Like, when I was going over there, me and Ciaran landed over there the 1st of April for a week, but I had got the job before Christmas. So from Christmas until that April, I was basically double jobbing. And because of the time difference, I would come back from schools with Ulster GAA at about 4:30, 5 o'clock in the evening. That was only midday over there. So I would be doing a lot of communicating with the executive committee with Rockland GAA, Joe McGurl, Niall McKenna, Mark Comerford, all of those guys, Susan Keeley, etc. And when I landed over there in April, all the people I'd been in communication with, I felt as if I knew them. We were doing calls. I was doing a call with them every day over Facebook or whatever. So I built up a little bit of a mini community for myself. And when I got there, they were in the middle of just finishing off the building. So the state-of-the-art clubhouse. And people don't really believe me sometimes, but when I was at home, and up until kind of last year, I could turn on the TVs and the floodlights of the clubhouse from Ireland or anywhere in the world. It's great.
Nice.
A lot of projects being done as well with Anne Gibson, who worked in the bar. But again, it was that community aspect. And the difference I found was, compared to home, was because of GAA clubs here, and it's been people you've grown up with and you know them so well. Whereas, and you would know this as well, being in a different country involving the GAA, I would class it more of a community aspect because of the amount of diverse range of people coming from different parts to that one club. What we try to do in Rockland, again, from the support that I had got, plus the work we'd done with Ulster GAA, and I knew, listen, we'll have a go and we'll see if it works. We'll throw mud at the wall, see if it sticks. 9 times out of 10 it did stick, but it was because of everything that the club stood for. They were a community-based club, like every other GAA club, but because they had the because they had the facilities, because they had the pitches, the numbers of coaches, the numbers of children, I found it difficult to not get involved in sessions at the start. I took about 6 months to stood back, watch what was happening, and just basically through the lens of the children and the coaches and everybody at the club. So then that fed in then to putting structures in place, because there's no point coming in going, this is what we're going to do, this is what we're going to do. You have to sit back 6, 8 months, get a feel for the club, get a feel for the people, and see where you can make a difference. And one of the things that I found was the under sixes. We're doing a great program, and I wanted to get involved in it. The club said no, because I was warned that I wasn't going to get involved in any teams. So I had to work it around a little bit different and say, okay, well, the under sixes are not a team. They're a mini crowd of lunatics. And they're not a team, they're a group. They're a fun group. They're goblins, and they're giants, and they're wizards. And they're like, what? I said, listen, it's the foundation stage. So I had to put a presentation together about why I wanted to get involved with it. I said, listen, I'll not be involved in any teams. I would do workshops with every single age group. I'll put structures in place, that's fine. But one age group I was involved with the under sixes, because I got to meet the parents when they first came in. And I got to know the parents, I got to know the children. So when they went up through the age groups, I had again building that community, building that environment for them, that I was there for them if they needed me. And that was huge. And that was the biggest structure that we wanted to put in, because we wanted a conveyor belt of players, and the club already had that, but we wanted a conveyor belt of coaches and parents working the way through. And the difference with Rockland, again, people will ask me, they'll ask you as well, Ciaran, should you stay with an age group or should you work your way up? And I said, listen, it depends on the context. Yeah. And in America, it's very much, you start with under sixes, you work your way up to U18s and then senior. So you have that conveyor belt. And again, it's about putting those structures in place. Yeah. Okay, well, when you're moving up the age groups, here are some KPIs that you should be thinking about. At under sixes, what our focus should be on, under eights. But there was an overarching theme throughout every structure that we did, was 3 things: was participation, again, and that included participation, increase in number of players, but coaches and administration, and getting more women involved in the club, more women involved in the executive committee, and that worked. Yeah. The second thing, again, was providing games. So we were, at Rockland, we had obviously the New York minor board games, but 1 session a week would be practice. And again, this goes back to language. I didn't like training. I don't like the word training. I've got a new dog and I train a dog. I'm training a player. Players practice, and again, depending on what you do with them, they practice. So whether it's deliberate practice or deliberate play, whatever you want to go about it. So we were practicing on one evening. The second evening had to be games. Didn't matter who was there. You pick the teams, you play games. No rules, no, just normal games. No coaching. Watch the games, change the teams, see what happens. They play the game at the weekend, the structured game with the New York minor board, and then your next coaching session is related to what you've seen in the games, the internal games, or what you see in the competitive games. And I can tell you one thing: the internal games that our guys had, boys and girls, were more competitive than the games that they were playing against St. Barnabas and Brandon's and all the other clubs in New York, because they had the numbers, the teams were mixed. They were competitive games, but they were competitive in terms of the score. There was 1 point in it, there was 2 points in it, there would be last minute goal to win it. And there was players at under 10 who were basically shouting at each other, saying, you give a bad pass. And then it was a case of bringing them back, saying, listen. And it happened once, and there was one lady, and a good friend of mine, came to make Ciaran's wedding from New York. Her name is Tina Murphy, and her son was involved in one of these spats that I'll call it. Mm-hmm. And Tina would be listening, so I've got permission to use her name all the time, and I do in every webinar I do. Her son and her son and her father are in every single presentation I do. But her and her husband was there, and they said, listen, have a word. I said, okay, so brought the two lads over. And basically were annoyed at each other because one of them had given a bad pass, which gave the other team a chance to score a goal. The other team won by a point. So they started kind of going at each other. And just by pure accident, came over to me and they were wearing their Rockland t-shirts. So it was green. So they were green, yellow, blue, orange. And they were all put in different teams just for the internal games. But they had Rockland summer camp stuff underneath. I thought, okay, lads. So at the weekend, love the way you're so competitive, which is great. However, this is not about winning internal game. This is about you being friends with each other, not only at under 10s, but all the way up to adult. What are you wearing under that t-shirt? I go, what? So what are you wearing under the t-shirt? So got them to take the t-shirt off. Both were wearing Rockland GAA halves. And he said, that's the reason why you should shake hands and make sure that you support each other no matter what happens. Yeah. And it was a case of, oh, okay. Now, Tina and John, they could have done that no problem. But I had known the lads really well down the under-8 group from when I first went there. They were one of the first groups I had worked with. They're now going up to under-12. And the change that I seen in them, but not only me, Ciara came back the following September after the April, and she said, oh, that's the under-10 team, is it? I said, no, that's the under-8s that you seen the very first week. Couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
Because they were getting games, they were playing matches, they weren't doing drills. Again, hit the word drills. They weren't doing straight line activities. They were playing games. They were given a problem. They were given a scenario. How are you going to fix it? Yeah. And they were asked, and a lot of them at the CYC, etc., were asked at halftime. The team talk was, listen, lads, you decide what happens. You fix things. What are we going to do better in the second half? You decide. And Steve Kerr, again, Golden State Warriors, he does that with his players, but you can do that with under-8s and under-10s.
Of course, you can.
Give them a scenario and trust them. And if it works, it works. If not, then that's where your coaching comes in terms of being more specific about what you want.
Owen, it's a good point you make about the structures, because I think I had something similar of an experience with Temple Oak Sing Street for Dublin GAA back in 2008 or so to 2011, where I think if you get in at a young age, and in terms of even aside from the players, which you very eloquently spoke about, but about the coaches, about the parents and the coaches, and if their first experience of the club is a young, or maybe not so young, energetic coach who maybe knows a little bit about what they're talking about but has passion for the game and it wants to implement structures, it gives them a very good idea and experience of the club right from the very beginning. And I think you can build a lot of loyalty amongst those people. And like ultimately what you want is that when you leave, because you will leave at some stage, that the structures remain in place, isn't it? And those people who came in at the beginning just as a helper, they're the ones maybe who might go on to be chairperson of the youth committee or whatever it is in some sort of way.
And that's kind of where, whenever I got to Rockland and having sat back for those 6 and 8 months and do a few workshops, but I was involved in meetings. I'd go and meet people, but it wasn't putting across my point of view or where we should go with this. I give them full ownership, full responsibility, facilitated workshops, etc., put everything together, and it was them that came up with it. Yeah. But understanding it had to be sustainable and making sure that the club was sustainable before I got there. Like, they had the facilities, they had the players, they had the capacity, they had the support. It was just a little bit of a preparing, again, as if the child preparing the path for or preparing the club for the path rather than telling them what to do, preparing the path for the club. Yeah. And making sure that they understood why they're doing it and not trying to do 7, 8, 9, 10 things. Do 3 things really well. Listen, we'll move on. And the same as the schools program that I had in Rockland. I was asked to go to so many different schools. I was only in one school. We did it so well. Yeah. We created an environment there, that school club link. But again, small steps, making sure that you do things right, that whenever you do leave, as you said, it is sustainable. People can take it on because it's not rocket science. Yeah. It's just a matter of having confidence, understanding the why and the how, and then thinking about, okay, well, what can we do then?
Yeah, and that's a kind of an informal strategic development of the club in terms of the structures you individually put in place. Did you get an opportunity then to actually sit down with the stakeholders and actually facilitate the process then, and what were the steps that were involved?
Yeah, so and again, this is from my work with Ulster GAA and Ulster Ladies, and we had so much experience of going into clubs and helping clubs with not only games development structures, but helping them with finance and community structures the way it first started. And you'd have been the same with Temple with Dublin as well.
Yeah.
One of the things that we kind of wanted to do was, I had a remit, so I had 6 areas in my remit. And what I specifically wanted to do was, there was 2 or 3 areas that kind of fed into each other. So what I wanted to do then was to make sure that whenever we were facilitating the workshops, that it was specific to the club's needs. But again, I was very conscious of telling them what I saw. I wanted them to come up with it. And again, with a lot of clubs in New York, it's Gaelic football, hurling, rounders, handball sometimes, but also camogie and ladies football. And the amount of people that didn't understand that camogie and ladies football was a different entity in Ireland, they couldn't understand that because they were so engraved, so entrenched in the structure of the club that they weren't separate. And which is just right in terms of getting more women involved in the club in terms of executive committee and stuff. So what I done was, and they all had different needs, and they all had different issues, they all had different challenges. So I wanted them to help each other out as well. And that was probably the most challenging in terms of not telling them, setting the scene, giving them an example of, okay, well, here's where we are. Well, what can we do then? Where can we go from this? So doing your SWOT analysis.
Yeah.
Again, I wanted them to go really in depth. And again, this is about the trust element as well. You know, I wanted them to be harsh in terms of not only themselves and their teams, but me as well. I'm a big boy. I can take it. It doesn't bother me at all. You're not going. Things aren't not going to roll your way all the time. You know, you're going to have challenges. Things aren't going to work. That's fine.
Yeah.
That's where you're going to learn. Same with players. You're going to make mistakes. But that's where you learn. But can you reflect on that? Can you think about, okay, well, we tried to do this. I'm not sure it worked. Okay, well, why didn't it work? How can we change it? And what are we going to put in place to help us achieve that?
Yeah.
And again, trying to get them to reflect in that way was difficult, not only for those sessions, but also I tried to do it for their coaching as well. Instead of saying, oh, how did the session go? And like, again, you as a coach developer, me as a coach developer, when you sit down with a coach and say, how did that go? The first thing, 7 times out of 10, it's a negative, straight away. I'm not sure about that. I shouldn't have done it. No. What's the positive? What went well for you? I should have. No. What went well for you?
True.
So trying to get the positive out of people can be very difficult. Getting the negative can be really, really easy. Want to kind of a little bit of carrot and stick, needs and wants. You know, so okay, well, here's what we need, here's what we want, and kind of how can we marry those together a little bit, not only for the players but for the club as a whole.
Very good, very good. I tell you, it's not only those people who come out with the negatives about their performances and how things are going. I had the same with London when I asked a player, you know, what do you think of that? How do you think you played? Well, I missed this chance, and then I gave away that ball, and then I didn't track that man. I'm saying, okay, great. Areas of development, fantastic. What did you do well? And it would take maybe 2 or 3 questions. I read a really interesting article the last couple of days by Dr. Anthony Turner, and it was about a high performance model for sport. And what I'll do is I'll upload it onto the website for people in the journal articles area. And in part, they took aspects of a business concept of VMOST, and that was stood for vision, mission, objectives, strategy, and tactics. And it broke down, you know, about, okay, well, how do you build a vision? How do you develop your mission? How do you set out your aims and objectives? What is culture? You know, we hear so much about core values and culture. Very, very interesting. And I like the way you took your SWOT analysis, because I think there's a lot of good concepts in business that you can apply into high performance sport, the very same. Okay, we'll keep cracking on because we'll be here all night. There's so many stuff to chat about. I wanted just to briefly touch on with the Special Olympics Ireland. So you were with Special Olympics a relatively short time ago. So you were national coach and sports development coordinator. I'm guessing because I myself, I had a little bit of experience of working with some people in Dublin a few years ago. I'm guessing it was a very, very interesting role, a good opportunity to work with people. And I mean, you get a lot back, don't you? You get a lot of joy in situations like that.
Probably the only thing about the role was I wasn't in it long enough. It was very similar to Rockland in terms of I was in the role about 8 months, and probably 6 or 7 of those months I was getting to know how things worked, kind of taking a back step in terms of what was happening, how in terms of my own learnings, how the organisation worked, and again how different it was in terms of my experience in New York with Ulster GAA, etc. as well. But again, as you said, the role was extremely interesting, and again, the people involved with Special Olympics and the clubs and the volunteers, the coaches and the athletes themselves, like it's a phenomenal organisation, and it's an organisation that does not get the help that it should get. So they can't stop now, and I would encourage people to go on to Special Olympics Ireland and donate. They're trying to raise money because they can't do their normal fundraising because of the situation, the restrictions that we're in.
Yeah,
The work that they do, not only in terms of sport, but in terms of health, healthy athlete program that Coach Donnelly would be involved with is wonderful. It's a fantastic organisation. My own reasons for joining it was I had actually applied for it when I was in New York before I got home. I didn't hear anything back from it, and then the job came up again. I was at home. I'd been at home for 6 weeks at this stage. My wife had got a job. She was in New York. We were kind of coming and going for about 18 months, and then she got a 4-year career break from the ages. However, her 4-year career break lasted 7 months. And we were getting married that summer, so I decided to move back home. Rockland were extremely supportive. They were wonderful. And I was doing workshops all over the country for clubs, just kind of keeping the car on the road. We were living with Ciaran's mum and dad.
Yeah.
When the Special Olympics job came up, I went for an interview, and you know when you kind of have a really good feeling about people and a really good feeling about an organisation, you're like, oh my God, you walk out of it and you're like, I want to work here. And that's exactly how I felt. With Maria and Ciaran Coventry, the director of Special Olympics, it didn't feel like an interview, it felt like a chat, which again, just said everything about the organisation. You know, they're building relationships and making sure that, you know, they get the right people involved. And whenever I was there, and again, I was involved in so many things, and they assisted me in terms of my PhD. They give me time off to go across. They were extremely supportive in that end. However, in terms of my own learning and development, I knew probably at some stage I would go back to the GAA. I didn't think it would be as soon, in fairness. And again, you know yourself, GAA jobs kind of come up like things. But I did in service with the Dublin staff, kind of just before actually you did your workshop last year. And I went for the job and was very fortunate to get it. But again, the support that I got from Special Olympics when I got the job with Dublin, in terms of my working out my notice, like they are a phenomenal organisation. And the role was very interesting because it was a new role, and it was a role that I was really enjoying getting my teeth into. And I'd only really started getting my teeth into it when I left, which is the disappointing aspect in terms of my own learning and development. But again, those reflections have improved, have made me more aware of my reflection from my PhD and my reflections and my relationships and how I talk to people. And you know, that experience of Special Olympics is something that I'll always be very grateful for, because you know, only for them, you know, I don't know where I would be right now, working at home. So I have to thank them a lot. Ciaran Coventry, Coach Donnelly as well, Ciaran, and Elaine Toomey was fantastic whenever I was there too. So, and everybody there. But again, I knew where I wanted to go, and that again was very difficult. Thinking about that and then moving on. Whereas when I was with Ulster, I was ready to move.
Yeah.
Rockland was a little bit different. I was coming home, because I had my fun in New York.
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
now, it was Ciaran's choice. She had got a really good job, her
Yeah.
dream job. So it was now her turn. Whereas the Special Olympics was a little bit different, and I was ready, but it wasn't. If you know what I mean, I would have loved to have been another year there if I had have, in terms of my own learnings and learning about business, like the amount of business plans and funding applications and stuff that I had a little bit of experience of in New York, etc. But in terms of government funding and making sure that everything is there's kind of responsibility, who's responsible in terms of budgets, was phenomenal for me.
Yeah.
So great organisation, and again, the work they do in terms of inclusiveness and helping athletes and helping sport and communities with people who have varying abilities is huge.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. I always tell people whenever they ask about advice to young coaches or people wanting to get into sports science or coaching or whatever domain within the sports, is to get out there and get experience. You don't need a degree. You don't need a master's, an accreditation. Like, get out at a young age 16, 17, 18, whatever it is, into your 20s. And I would always recommend as well that, like, work with your elite end sports people, but also work with the non-elite, work with adults, work with kids. I mean, I learned so much with Dublin GAA working with little 4-year-olds and 5-year-olds, like you were saying, in the foundation phase or the nursery or whatever, academy, whatever you want to call it, but also then work with people with physical impairments, with mental impairments, with able body. I did a little bit of work in the Wormwood Scrub prison over here in London, and again,
Yes.
You get to experience a different thing. So all across the whole range of people. I want to quickly just move on then. So your current role with as learning and games development coordinator with Dublin. Now I want to ask you something specific, because I know coaches will want to know. A lot has been made, obviously, of what has Jim Gavin done, what has Desi Farr done, Pat Gilroy, etc. on the senior side. I'm interested, and I have some experience myself going back years, but current phase. What are the crumbs of success that they've left behind at underage, and also in terms of that kind of the stuff that you're involved in, the learning, the coach development, the games development, coordination. I know Ger O'Connor is bloody too good, and he's, helping to churn out coaches and young players and everything like that. But can you speak a little bit just about some of those kind of evidence of success that you see from more of an underage rather than at senior?
So people who kind of know me in terms of know my role with Dublin GAA, I started a job 3 weeks before lockdown happened. I'm kind of getting to know the organisation from afar a little bit. I haven't been in the office in Parnell Park. I'm based in Parnell Park at the start, and then I've been doing in service with the GPOs, the games promotion officers within the clubs. But what Dublin have, and again, why I wanted to join Dublin GAA was go back to Ulster GAA, go back to Ulster Ladies, and especially Rockland. The Ulster element was the structures that Ulster had in terms of staff, in terms of capacity, in terms of support. Rockland, then you go to, from a province then to a club, but again has capacity, coaches, players, has support, and you're adding value to what they have, and hopefully they're adding value to as well as your own areas.
Yeah.
And Dublin is kind of an area that, again, people maybe don't understand as much as they should, and people see what happens in the press and they see this and that and whatever else. But when you actually go down in terms of the capacity of Dublin, yes, it's bigger, which is fine. That's fine. And again, in terms of their structures, it means then that you need more support. So you're talking about the clubs, the staff, volunteer coaches, players, etc. but it's the whole dynamic of why they're doing it. And it's not just about, again, what people see, the 5 in a row. It's below that.
Yeah.
It's the nursery programs, it's the nursery numbers, and it's, you know, it's that building that huge capacity so that there is a conveyor belt of players coming through the whole time. But there is a conveyor belt of coaches coming through the whole time. And yes, they have more players, more clubs, more coaches than anybody in Ireland and in the GAA family throughout the world, etc. But again, it's how they put things in place and the fact that they're willing to try things. You know, and again, they can try things because they have that capacity and support.
Yeah.
So it does make things, and you would know this, Ciaran, yourself, having worked with WGA, it makes things a little bit easier because you're not worried about, you know, there is some clubs who struggle with their numbers in Dublin.
Yeah.
But they have that support in the background, whether it's through the club, through the coaching assistants, through the games promotion officers, up to the RDOs, throughout with Ger O'Connor as Director of Coaching and Games, and then John Costello as CEO. But then you have Stevie, Football Development Officer, and you know, you have the hurling development officers. You have Damien with the fixtures. It's finance. It's a huge undertaking. But again, it's the one premise is, listen, to make Dublin as good as they can be, not only for the players, which is, yes, that's the need and that's what everybody wants.
Yeah.
But you want to build communities and you want to build people and you want to make sure that they're happy and they have a program of games, whether that's through the CCC1 or CCC2, or whether that's through the internal games in the club. And my role, again, I'm still trying to learn my role a little bit because of the COVID. But my role is to try and support the games promotion officers and the RDOs as much as I can in terms of coach education, workshops, assist Ciaran in terms of research and resources. And that's where my PhD comes in. So in terms of Special Olympics, my PhD, where I'm working now is more related to where my PhD is going to go. And that was a big element of why it came to join Dublin, was having that not as much as of a detachment from work to study. And again, in terms of my role with Dublin, I have a lot of autonomy, which suits me. I like to try new things. Ger and Dublin like to try new things. There's trust there, there's the environment, the relationships are there, and that element is very much beneficial to me, myself, being selfish, because I had that at Rockland. I could come home with Rockland. I was at home for 6 weeks, working from home, turning everything off, turn the floodlights off when it was in Galway, in New York. So that element of the freedom and the autonomy, but the trust element and that environment is huge. The staff, the GPOs that we have and the games promotion officers that we have, and again, when you have experience of games promotion officers, the people that are there now and the people who have been there, Dublin support, they love people, seeing people move on to bigger and better things, just like Ulster did, just like Rockland did. You know, and that element as well, very important, that in terms of staff development and staff well-being, and that's one thing Ger wanted to bring in big in terms of a recent in-service with GPOs. So normally, as you know yourself, you do in-service with everybody on one day, but obviously because of COVID, we had to break it up into 4 days. But there was an element of their well-being, so how they were feeling, how they were feeling during lockdown, during the restrictions, how it was affecting them. So that area of, you know, not only the staff member and the employee, but the person. And again, it comes back full circle. You know, it's the person in front of you. It's not what they can do. It's not who they are. It's, you know, how are they going to help you? How are you going to help them, and building that relationship and building that environment? It's so important.
I think it's great because all the evidence from the reports about high performance teams and organizations, you'll see trails of and evidence of high autonomy, high level of trust, high creativity levels, and also ability and willingness and allowance for risk taking. And if you think of it, if you think of, you know, the best teams, the best organizations, and I would include Dublin in this, all those things are coming together. And my experience, like yours, is that they have created that environment, that culture, to allow the workers and their staff to actually do those things. And it takes time, but I suppose the first thing they've done, and which you would recommend to all other counties, really just copy their program, is get in the right people, get in the good people, get in the Jerry O'Connors and the other, you know, young and up and coming people who are following him in his wake. Get the people in, and then you can obviously build the capacity to as much as you can.
You talked about it, like the way you mentioned risk taking. Again, it goes back nearly full circle in terms of what we talked about earlier on, play. You know, risk taking through play, through giving them autonomy, through giving the children autonomy, asking them questions. That's a risk. Getting them to climb on the sofa, getting them to climb trees, that's a risk.
Yeah.
But they'll learn through that. And again, as a staff member, you'll learn through that. You'll learn, okay, I'll do that a little bit different next time.
Yeah.
Again, reflections is so important, and asking the children how they feel can be their own reflection. Yeah. Asking a staff member how they're feeling or how that went for them, they'll be able to go into a little bit more detail. But the overarching theme is very similar. It's getting them to think, okay, well, how do we do that? Why do we do it? And they're thinking, well, okay, this is what we're going to do next.
Yeah.
Try and improve things.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, we'll take a really quick break and we'll come back and chat about your PhD and about the science of play. We won't keep you too long. We'll just have a quick word about the services on offer on dailysportscience.com at the moment. If you don't want to listen to Joe and Ross spouting about stuff with myself, switch off now. I'm only joking, don't switch off now. I would recommend as well, Owen, you have at least one blog post or maybe a second up on the website.
I think of two, yeah.
Two, yes, exactly. So I would recommend anybody go and take a look at that on the blog post, and some great stuff. And we must get you on to write up an article about your PhD work as well. I think it'd be really interesting. Okay, so we'll just take a quick break now, and we'll see you in a second. The Locker Room Podcast is brought to you by dailysportscience.com, an online elite coaching and sports science service, membership service. You can search all the information and services over at dailysportscience.com. You'll see everything over there. I'm here with Ross and Joe. Lads, there's loads of stuff going on at the moment. Ross, we'll run through really quick. Ross, you've got a really interesting off-season coaches CPD series, video series for the members.
Yeah, really good, Keir. So six-part presentation, 6 different topics that are kind of out there on social media and stuff. And I'm kind of, let's say, doing 3 to 4 of them, and you guys are taking the baton on that. So really good so far. We've had 2 released based on the individual training session and periodization. Recorded one recently around developing the individual player. We've got one around the physical corner, and then you guys are taking over the tactical side and also the environment and culture. So really good opportunity, especially with things going on in Ireland at the minute, to learn and keep sharing information. So really enjoyed that, really good feedback, and they'll be released throughout the next 6 weeks.
Great stuff. Joe, there's loads of Gaelic football and hurling practices gone up as well.
Yeah, there is, Ciaran. Every week there are Gaelic practices going up, and I know that Ross talked about. I think I'm doing CPD session 4, which is how to set up a team tactically. So I'm putting up some kickouts there, for instance, and some defensive structures that coaches can kind of get used to in the off season and plan to bring in maybe next season. So yeah, lots of stuff there coming up on the website in terms of practices.
Good stuff. We've got an off season GAA program as well, in terms of gym program and fitness and running program as well, designed by Ben Smalley, our sports scientist as well, and overlooked by Ross as well, head of performance. So that's really good for all members. So they're all exclusive members. The last 2 things to mention then is the Locker Room webinar series, which is closed for exclusive for our DSS members. So that's every second Monday night. We bring on an expert to do a presentation, a PowerPoint presentation through Zoom. Everyone can dial in live and then ask some questions as well. It's been really popular, and it's a brilliant new initiative. We're always coming up with these new initiatives. The last thing then to mention is the Buddy Referral Scheme. So that's where a member can send a referral to their friend. The friend will get 25% off the sign-up fee, and then the member will get access to one of the GAA positional profile videos. So Ross, we did them over the last few weeks. I think there's some good content there.
class content. I think it's a great initiative. Instead of just, normally the person who refers someone doesn't get anything and the new member gets whatever the offer is. But this stuff is gold dust, in my opinion. You get info on what each positional essential is and what you're looking for each player and how to coach it. So it gives you real good information on developing the individual players in your team.
Yeah, exactly. And remember, for members, it's less than 15 quid a month. Ross, that's less than a Ross Bennett haircut once a month to cut back those golden locks.
And less than, I think the book I wrote 4 years ago still hasn't creeped up to 15 quid. So you're getting so much for that for sure. Yeah, and I only get a haircut once a year, Keir, so £15 a year is not bad, I don't think.
Yeah, the girls in the house here, Ross, they just said, what is the point in Ross Bennett if he doesn't have long, flowing blonde hair? They get disappointed when it's cut.
I know, it's coming back. It's coming back.
So yeah, the book, so for the price of Ross Bennett's book, which you should all go out and buy, I've forgotten the name of it now at the moment. But
I can tell you, kids, injury prevention and rehabilitation. Now, he never knew I was going to plug that on here, but I need sales. Christmas is coming up. I need some sales. Christmas
is coming. I've got 2 copies of them here, Ross, so we can sell that off second hand to Joe. He might be able to use it.
You need them for the doorstop in those heavy doors of yours.
Yeah, exactly. Joe, I was just about to say that you'd need a few quid for the online dating, but those days are over for you.
Yeah, I think they are, Ciaran. Hopefully.
Good to hear.
He tried to keep it quiet, but those weekends in the New Forest, we knew you wasn't going on your own, Joe.
Exactly. It was dodgy. It was dodgy. 15 quid, Joe, per month, not much.
Yeah, 15 quid a month. Yeah, I've had a look at I think 4 or 5 of the positions, and I've never ever seen as much detail in terms of the different positions in football, in Gaelic football, broken down into so much detail. So there's lots of, as Ross said, it's gold dust. There's lots of great learning points there for coaches and managers. Great,
good stuff. Okay, enjoy the rest of the episode, everybody. The podcast, remember, dailysportscience.com, and head over. We've actually started a new offer for listeners to the podcast. So just use POD20 as a voucher code to sign up membership, and you get 20% off as well. So for any new members out there or relapse members, just use POD20 and you get 20% off membership. A good time, as the lads say, Ross was saying, with all the new CPD and everything. So a good time to join up. Okay, enjoy. Okay, well, welcome back. Owen, we have to get on to a little bit, and as I say, we won't keep you too long, but I wanted to chat to you a little bit about iCoachKids and your PhD. And I heard Dr. Sergio, again, the founder, but you'll tell me more, called it a global not-for-profit movement that aims to support children's coaches from around the world, or maybe even they were your words. And he spoke a lot about a child-centered approach and everything like that. Can you speak a little bit about what iCoachKids is as an organization, how people can either get involved or maybe use the resources, because there's some brilliant resources out there, including your podcast, and also then leading on a little bit into your PhD work about the power of play?
So the iCoachKids program, and again, certainly be better able to tell you, it started with a relationship with Sport Ireland, Sport NA and Sport Scotland. So Leeds Beckett and there was research put out in terms of coaching children. And the first thing to come out of it was the Sport Ireland coaching children workshops. So that was a little bit of a tester in terms of the lit review, the research, understanding, well, why would we do this for children, and the 4 different workshops that are available for people to download on the Sport Ireland website, but also was face-to-face workshops, and again, a little different now, so they're not happening as much as they should be happening. So then that lent itself then, whenever that happened, to the iCoachKids. So it was born out of that those workshops with Sport Ireland. So Sheila and Declan with Sport Ireland would have been heavily involved in that, as well as Sergio and Michael McGeehan and Haley Harris and everybody else who did fantastic work with Sport Ireland coaching, have helped me a lot in terms of my own journey. My own kind of relationship with iCoachKids, again, it was Sergio. So Sergio has a thread. You pull the thread of Sergio and Owen Mooney together, and a lot comes out. Back to 2009, But my role with Rockland, the second iCoachKids conference was happening in Leeds back at university. I was actually at home for 4 weeks, and then I was heading back for the start of the fall season. So around about the end of August, start of September. And then I was like, okay, listen, we're going to go on holidays again when I got over there. So myself and Ciaran, we went Whereas somewhere really nice, came back, and within that, Sergio had asked me would I get involved and would I present at the conference in Leeds, and I said yes straight away. And then I said, okay, well, I better put this to Rockland. So they were great. I actually had a meeting whenever I was coming back. So the way it worked out, I flew back, had the meeting with Rockland the next day, and then flew to Leeds. So a little bit of a whistle-stop tour. It was a theory workshop. Again, just more or less in terms of my coaching with Ulster GAA, Rockland, coaching children, etc. And using the puppets that you see behind me, a few of the things that I've used before, and Sergio has seen plenty of times. So that was great. And then from that, I was asked to speak at the GAA National Conference, spoke in New York at Mercy College, etc. So from that second iCoachKids conference, a lot has happened. Then I was involved in the third iCoachKids conference, and it was a practical workshop. And again, it was more around the area of free play. And the reason why I do free play, if you're watching this video in speech marks, if you're not watching the video, then there's no reason, is that play shouldn't be free. Free play is not really free play because there's rules within the free play, if that makes sense. Yeah. So I know that if me and Ciaran are playing together, if I punch him in the nose, that's not good. So the free play element is don't punch Ciaran in the nose. Yeah. So be safe. Yeah. So what I wanted to do was the adults were coming. I said, listen, as soon as they came in, and again, it's getting the feel for the people who were there, same as the children, was having a go. So organised chaos, free play. Come in, all the equipment is out, and this happened in all my lessons with Ulster GAA. Depending on the age group, I could have the gear out. Some of the other age groups, I couldn't, because if I had the gear out, it would be complete bad. Yeah. Yeah. Again, you have to know your players, know your children, know the group that you're working with. But again, they're adults, so I'm taking it for granted, and I'm assuming, you never assume, but I'm assuming that they're going to behave themselves. Yeah. Didn't happen. Didn't happen. So there's big balls, and we were throwing the balls at each other, and I was like, that's fair enough. 3 things happened. You play with the equipment if you want. If you didn't want to play the equipment, then talk to somebody that you don't know, get to know them. And if you didn't want to do that, then just relax and chill out. But everybody started playing. So that was the practical workshop, and then I was bringing it back to getting them to make up their own games, but with what was in my head. And I wanted them to think, okay, well, here's the theme that I'm giving you. What do you think the skill is, or the tactical concept is in my head? And it was completely different because they thought in a different way to me. They understood the task different to me, and it's the same with children. You know, because you understand it as a coach doesn't mean that a 30-year-old boy, man or woman playing is going to understand it. So again, bringing it back to looking through the lens of the person in front of you. Yeah. So then the iCoachKids, in terms of the iCoachKids podcast, I'd done my PhD. So I was coming back from New York. Sergio O'Neill was moving back, and I had seen that Leeds Beckett had put up about the Doctor of Professional Practice PhD about 2 or 3 months before I moved home. So I retweeted it, not thinking anything of it. And then I was in the airport, and Sergio rang me and he said, oh, no, how are we going? Because this was before the third iCoachKids conference. So he's ringing about that, but then he said, oh, I see, have you seen the PhD? And I said, yeah. And so would you be interested? And I'm like, and I was like, a lot was happening. I was moving home. I was about to fly back to New York to pack. I said, listen, I'll tell you what, give me the weekend and I'll let you know. So basically all I did, and as soon as he planted a seed, and when a seed is planted in my head, and when I want to do something, I'll do it. Whether people want me to do it or not, it's fine. It doesn't really bother me at all. So send it to Ciaran said, yeah, you have to do it. Just because of the structure of the course. It's the taught modules over the first year. The fact of working with Sergio and my own research in terms of PhD, and I know you started one yourself. Yeah. You're your supervisor is vitally important. And the fact that I knew my research would be on children, and again, putting 2 and 2 together and getting 4, but I might get 5, and thinking, right, well, if I do it in children, surgeon's going to be me, my supervisor. And I knew that was going to happen anyway. I didn't know where my research was going to go, and it completely changed, and it's still changing, which is a good thing in fairness.
Yeah.
But the iCoachKids podcast came about because of the way the PhD is. Yes, you have to do a thesis like normal, but we can have project outputs. So we can do it like a normal PhD, research papers, great. Or we can have practical project outputs and a reduced thesis. So my project outputs were the podcast. And again, I was trying to get ahead of Sergio, because I knew he would probably bring out an iCoachKids podcast at some stage. So literally, I got my one of my best friends, John Woods, who done up a Coaching Children with Owen Mooney podcast logo. So he's really professional, and he's great at that. So he sent me it, and I sent it on to Sergio, and I said, "Oh, I'm about to launch this." He sent me back. Oh, we could maybe do something here. So nice. About then, I spoke to all the stakeholders and said, "Listen, would you be interested in doing the iCoachKids podcast with Owen Mooney?" And I was like, "Yes, of course." Because of, again, the capacity and what I had been involved with, all the people that I had contact with and that he had contact with as well. So it was a no-brainer, really. And so that was one of the project outputs. And there's going to be 6 episodes, roughly 6 episodes dedicated to just play. And I have one already up. It's episode 5 with Claire Daniels of the FA, The Power of Play, similar to this one, only a little bit different. So the other 5 episodes are going to be specifically on play. Now, where that goes, I don't know. The second project output is going to be a playing sport framework, just to help coaches in terms of what they could do. So kind of like a playing sport menu of activities, of why you might do something, how it might impact in what you can do. Now, that's a constantly changing document. Anybody who follows me on Instagram or Twitter will know that it started off in my notebook. It's just loads of notes and reflections and sense making about not only PhD, but work, family, chats, everything. So that's kind of, and again, it's a flexible document. And then the last one is the playing sport workshop. So running a workshop, again, making sure that all the research that I'm doing, all the readings that I'm doing is impacting on the workshop. And the framework is going to impact on the workshop, and the focus groups with coaches is going to impact on the workshop. So again, it's going to be that kind of flexible document that's going to constantly change, and workshop that's going to constantly change. But after it's finished, I'll be hoping that it'll be a workshop that we can use for coaches to assist them in their understanding of play and why play is important, how play is important, and how it can impact on children, not only in children, but youth, adults, or older people, everybody. And it's not just children, but children are the main remit for my research. Because if you can work with a group of 4 and 5-year-olds and you can coach them and you can enjoy coaching them, every other age group above that is easy. You're not going to have to, I'm hoping that you're not going to have to tie the laces of a 25-year-old or wipe the snots of a 25-year-old, or so that element of the parent element of the grandmother or the class clown is not there as much. But my focus on play, and again, it's something that has evolved from my research, from my first research proposal, and again, it's probably the most challenging aspect that I have, because I'm usually very focused in terms of what I want. But then again, I come back to very open to chaos and not on organization, and making sure that, okay, well, I'll try this to see what happens. And I'll try this thinking I'll get here. And then all of a sudden, I'm on a spaghetti junction all the way somewhere completely different. But it's somewhere that I'm going that if I hadn't tried the first element, it wouldn't happen. So, and then that's the beauty of working with children and coaching. If you think you have everything, set, and if you think you know everything, then you know nothing. And, and that's again, in terms of Sergio, he is a mentor, and Gerald Connor's a mentor. Terence McWilliams is a huge mentor of mine, Philip Pierre, yourself as well, all people that, anybody you chat to, they're mentors and you're learning from them. And, but the fact that I have Sergio, and I know him so well, involved in my PhD has made things much easier for me because I'm not academic. I enjoy reading, in fairness. I do enjoy reading, and my confirmation of registration was recently 3-4 weeks ago, and Jim McKenna and Ian Cowburn were my two facilitators on that, and it was great because of what I learned from them too, in terms of how I can make things better, how I can gain more insight in terms of where I'm going with the research. And again, it was a different perspective. And that's where, that's why the biggest challenge for myself now in terms of the PhD is, because I'm in Ireland, I didn't get the last two face-to-face 3-day blocks in Leeds, and you can only do so much over Zoom and over Microsoft Teams. I have to go in there and meet people and being able to detach from work to study, and I find that very difficult, and sometimes take on too much. And I'm just recently had a great season with Shane Curran with Duro GAA, and having Duro and then coaching and working and ice and restrictions and then PhD and readings, and this yourself, and being a new father as well yourself. It's where you find the time, and again, it's just taking those 15-20 minutes to read, but then can you gain further insights in terms of where the tensions are in the reading, and try and think about, okay, well, this is where I find this is really interesting. That's a huge nugget in terms of my own research, but also in terms of my own coaching, but also in terms of my own relationships. And again, this is something I'm sure that you're thinking about and finding out, is that your sense making and where it impacts in everything. It has tentacles everywhere.
No, certainly the PhD is certainly, for me anyway, the biggest challenge of my career and academic path and everything like that. And you have to, like you say, you have to nearly embrace that uncertainty. And as my supervisor said to me, it's certainly a marathon rather than a sprint, and you don't know what direction it's going to go, and it's little bit by bit. And hopefully my supervisor doesn't hear me saying that I thought many times in the first 6 months about, this is not for me. I'd quitting and going, oh my God, what am I after putting myself into? But anyway.
I think it comes back to kind of being a coach is taking those risks and having to go with something. And if it works great and you find something out, well, that's even better. And it's realizing that it's a journey. And coaching is a journey, and working with players and children is a journey. And that play journey that I'm on now is something I'm passionate about. I enjoy, I've experience in, but it's something that I'm only scratching the surface of.
I want to finish just briefly with the last couple of things on that concept of play, and like the kind of the science or the thought process behind play, because some people, when they hear play, they will just think of, well, that's not applicable for an adult team. Like, we don't throw around balloons and stuff like that. So can you just speak about, first of all, the importance of play and why it works across the age groups, but also what are the different types of play? And I know you probably a lot to go through in there, but just some of the important things around the concept of play, I think.
So again, this is something that I'm constantly learning all the time. So my own concept, my own understanding of play was free play and unstructured play and structured play. And those as play types when I first started kind of doing all the readings. But again, in terms of sport, specifically sport and play, there's not as much research in terms of that area in terms of play and sport. However, there's a huge amount of research on terms of play and education, learning through play, occupational therapy, physical play, social, emotional, how it impacts on a child making friends, how it impacts on their feelings, how it impacts on building resilience, courage, caring, etc. Then obviously the physical elements. So fine motor skills and your gross motor skills.
Yeah.
But one of the biggest things, and kind of one of the areas of play, and especially in terms of my research, because it's involving children, it's a human right. And it is in the UN Convention of the Child that it is play is a human right for children. So technically, if you look at things now, and especially in terms of COVID, but even in terms of the restrictions, that human right has been taken away somewhat compared to probably when we were younger.
Yeah.
So, and again, I go back to my COR, and in terms of what I talked about, where I lived, there was a massive big green, big grass area, loads of houses around it. When I was growing up, that was constantly full with people playing, children playing, boys, girls, any of every age, playing football, Gaelic, or whatever it is. Fast forward then to 10 years, I'm about 17, walking to school, I walk past it and doing my AS levels, and there's nobody playing before school. We would have done that before school, in fairness. But after school, especially, and we were creating muck today balls. And again, I talked about earlier on, starting 1v1, and it ended up being 20v20. We refereed it, we coached, we were learning about tactical awareness, we were learning about attacking and defending and midfield play and width and depth and everything else. But we didn't realise we were learning it. And again, there was no coaches, there was no adults, it was us. So then when I think about play then is, and I talked about it a little bit earlier on, it shouldn't be up to adults to allow children to play. And again, if you allow children to play, technically you're still taking away their human right, so they should be allowed to play anyway.
Yeah.
But again, especially in organised sport, that element of learning the sport, learning the game, learning a position, learning different positions, that's adult-centric. Whereas again, it's the needs and wants of the child are very important, and the needs of the sport to the wants of the child can be very different.
Yeah.
And what I want to try and find out in my research is, what do coaches understand, about playing, how play can impact on the children, but also how play can impact on them as coaches, as adults, not only as coaches, but, having that freedom and having that, autonomy to have a go at something. Yeah. Try it. Show me what you can do. Have a go and you will know. You know how it feels, you know if you can do it or not, you know whether you can make it a little bit harder for yourself, a little bit easier. But you're building that environment, you're building that connection with sport, but also, a love of the game, and you want them to help children to find things out for themselves without telling them.
Yeah.
Because you can't wrap them in cotton wool isn't going to work. They're going to have disappointments, and play allows for that. And that's where kind of the play aspect in terms of the types of play, and there's so many types of play.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous, and it's an area that I'm looking at now in terms of, okay, well, what types of play do I include in my framework, or what play types do I include in the workshop? Yeah. Now, if me and you are playing a game, Ciaran, and we're doing 1v1, and I'm trying to get past you. Now, my play type, I might be worried more about my movement. So there you have locomotor play. Whereas you might be kind of more thinking about, okay, how are you going to stop me? So in a way, you have a little bit of imaginative and creative play. Yeah. Whereas I'm focusing on maybe a little bit of exploratory play. I'm going to maybe bounce to my right. You'll have to move across, whatever way it works. But the different types of play kind of fit into each other in different aspects. So it's not just one of the things that kind of at the start of the research will say, okay, well, here's locomotor play. Here's what we can do for locomotor play. That was the framework. For now, that's changed now, because it's not just locomotor play. That's physical, but then it comes into language. So what is locomotor? A train. So you're going from one place to the other. How can you get there? And that imagery comes in. So that little bit of fantasy play, and then speech and language. So you have communicative play then. So you're talking to people, but also you're listening. Yeah. So you have speech and language in that as well. Yeah. And then you have obviously the social and emotional. So your friendships and making sure that they're getting a good foundation for the sport, but also the environment that they're in. The understanding of what you're asking them, and again it comes back to questioning. So if you question them and they don't give you an answer, it doesn't mean they don't know the answer. It might be because of how you ask the question. Or you might have asked the question, and then a lot of coaches, they ask a question and they go, oh, silence. I have to finish the answer. I have to give them the answer. Silence is golden.
Yeah.
Absolutely golden. And especially with adults, with children. And the play aspect, again, because my research is on children, and or the farmer who's done a lot of work in terms of the Gaelic for Girls programme in relation to play and fun and enjoyment and learning, that all comes into it. So asking them a question is communicative play. It is an aspect of play because they're having to think, they're having to, think about what answer they're going to give. So there's your speech and language. They're thinking about they could be thinking about giving a wrong answer. So that could be coming back to social emotional about the relation with you, and they don't feel comfortable giving you an answer no matter what that is. But one of the things that, in terms of the different types of play, is because there's so many, it can confuse coaches a little bit. And one of the aspects that what I'm looking towards is that whenever you're failing on play or your sessions, it's important that not only the children but everybody feels appreciated. They should feel that their opinion matters. And again, that comes back again to the Article 12. Yeah. So the Article 12 of the Convention, UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, is about children's voice being heard, asking them and getting their opinion. And Article 31 is the actual human right of play. They should be able to play.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I was just going to say, it's I think for coaches, isn't it a case of, like you said there, of you start in a simple situation of build your foundation, give the kids a voice, give them opportunity to play, and then bit by bit you can add layers. If you're thinking of for your club coach, I know like there's some of the Premier League soccer club academies now, and in their warm-ups they'll have problem-solving games, collaborative games, decision-making games, and they're challenging them in different ways that, for instance, may have absolutely nothing to do with soccer or professional football, or maybe not even a ball. There could be something completely different, and in ways you're developing their personality, aren't you?
And again, you're kind of touching there on, as you know yourself, the games for understanding, non-linear pedagogy, all that there stuff as well. You're creating an environment, you're making sure that people, again, feel appreciated and respected, but that they're making decisions. They have autonomy, that they're in the environment that will allow them to think about, okay, well, here's a problem. How am I going to fix it? What am I going to do to fix that problem? But also thinking about, well, why are we doing this? Why are we playing? Why is it important? Why should I, as a coach, bring in play?
Yeah.
And the biggest thing for me would be enjoyment. Not only for the kids, like a lot of the time, I would say to the kids, I would say to the coaches at a workshop, the children and the players are guinea pigs.
Yeah.
What you try out is it's trial and error.
Yeah.
You can have a lot of fun in terms of your own learning as a coach. You can forget about the players and the children and the youth and the adult players. Having a go at, okay, I'm going to try this today just to see what happens.
Yeah.
And then you reflect on that. And it's so important that because you're having that enjoyment, you're maximizing their learning, you're maximizing their enjoyment. And again, you're involving them, which is so important. You're not telling them, here's what we're going to do, this is what we're going to do, because during the game, that's not going to happen. Once they cross that white line, once they cross that line of basketball, soccer, Gaelic football, hurling, whatever it is, you can shout and bawl all you want.
Yeah.
You're not having any influence, and it's just noise. Yeah. So preparing them, as I said, like one of the things this is, and it's a lovely quote that I've heard before, is prepare the child for the path, not the path for the child.
Yeah.
So give them that responsibility that they're putting down their own tarmac or their own stones, so that they can move forward and that they can improve.
Yeah,
you as a coach, it's the same.
Yeah. No, it's a great summary of the whole topic. I think it's a fascinating area. We'll keep a close eye on the research. Owen, thanks very much for coming on the show. I presume, is it Twitter where people can get in contact and reach out to you, or what's the best way?
Yeah, so Twitter be handy if they want to DM me. My DM's open, so work away. I look forward to interacting with people if they are. And again, Ciaran, just in terms of myself, thank you for having me on. We're really scratching the surface a wee bit, and congratulations on to the new addition to the family, as well as all the work you're doing with Daily Sports Science. And I've enjoyed how it's improved and how the journey of Daily Sports Science, not only it, but also yourself as well. So thanks for having me on.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate it, Logs. Great getting you on. Make sure everybody go over to the podcast as well. Owen's podcast is iCoachKids podcast. You'll find it, I presume. I found it on SoundCloud and Spotify, and so you can find it on all the platforms. If you haven't already, for ourselves, please go and subscribe on YouTube channel if you can, to Daily Sports Science, and give a little review and a rating on Apple Podcasts. I see we got a rating on of 1 out of 5 from somebody. So thanks very much to my older brother, Mark, for that rating. If you get a chance, somebody just leave a few reviews. And thanks very much to Ripped.app as well, our sponsors. It enables us to keep these podcasts going. So Owen, once again, thank you very much. And everybody out there, thanks for listening.